Hello and welcome to Seeing Red. It is June 17th, 2024. I am Will Leitch here, as always, with the great Bernie Miklasz. Follow us on Twitter at Seeing Red Pod. Email seeingredpod@gmail.com. If the season ended today, Bernie, and that would be very confusing. I feel like that would make the trade deadline like mid-May. I don't know. It would be very weird. I would be very disappointed. It would be like basically like a slightly longer version of 2020. But if the season ended today, the Cardinals not only would be in the playoffs, they'd actually be the number 5 seed. They'd be playing in Smyrna, Georgia, to be playing the Atlanta Braves. A very successful week for the Cardinals, I have to say, all told. I do not think this is a team that's going to ever make it easy on itself. But if you're going to make it harder on yourself, you might as well win while you're doing so. And against 2 teams in the division that are all crammed together with the Cardinals did it this weekend, winning 2 or 3 of Pittsburgh and 2 or 3, frankly, pretty exciting games, even if Pedro Pages was the entire offense all weekend. Those are nice little wins.
No, absolutely. And listen, we all know the Cubs are hardly menacing offensively these days. They don't pose all that much of a threat. But those 2 games that the Cardinals won, I mean, it was like walking the tightrope the whole time. I mean, and so the Cardinals, only got 5 runs in the 2 games they won, with, as you alluded to, Pages doing most of the damage there. So the Cardinals only scored 5 total runs in the 2 games that they won. But their pitchers allowed 1 run in those 2 wins. I mean, and that's kind of the way the Cardinals have to do it, because even though the St. Louis offense has perked up some, but let's not get carried away here. There's still a lot of struggles. There's still a lot of quiet days. There's still some players missing from the lineup. And they need their pitching to be excellent. And basically that's what's happened. I mean, the Cardinals have the best record in the National League. As we record this, they have the best record in the National League, 20-11 since May the 12th. And their pitching has been, a couple clunkers here and there, but their pitching has been simply outstanding over that time. And to me, that's the number 1 factor by far in their success in turning their season around to the point that they have. I mean, when you go from 9 games under 500 to 500, but basically you've improved by 9 games, and you got the best record in the National League since May the 12th, something has to be, you have to be functioning at a very high level, at least in some areas. And the Cardinals are functioning at a very high level in terms of their starting pitching and in terms of their bullpen. I mean, got a little hairy with the relievers, even in the 2 wins, but hey, they didn't crack, and they got the job done. So I'm just thrilled to see the Cardinals pitch so well, because we know that it's mandatory. It's absolutely mandatory that this team pitches very well, or they're not going to have much of a chance to sustain any success. So along those lines, the indicators are positive.
I like to praise 2 people that frankly don't often get a lot of praise in this podcast, though I'm probably tougher than most on one and probably lighter than most on the other. The first is Miles Michaelis. For crying out loud, this is a guy that I was like, wow, this is not only is a 5th starter, he's not a good 5th starter. It certainly looked very rough for a while. And I think, as I said on the show a couple of times, tends to be kind of irritating when things aren't going well. He'll put like a funny hat or make like a little joke or kind of subtly criticize somebody else when things aren't going well, to try to hide that a little bit. But man, I cannot deny he was terrific last week and really has been good for 3 consecutive starts, and frankly, manageable. Yeah. And like, even like, to me, like I look at these last 5 starts, when he gets the Cubs, where he went 6 innings to give up 3 runs, lost against the Phillies, 6 innings, 3 runs. That's like fine. That is great. I got no beef with that whatsoever. But the 3 starts since then have been terrific. And I really feel, the Paul Skeens game on Monday was a very entertaining matchup, or Tuesday, whatever day that was, the first game of last week. Was a very entertaining game. And it was actually kind of fun to watch Michaelis kind of raise his game and pitch obviously in a very different way from Skeens, but kind of match him in a very cool way. And he was fantastic against the Cubs. In fact, I think when he gave up that double to Hap, it felt like an aberration. You sensed him being kind of frustrated. Michaelis has been their best starter for a month and has been desperately needed for him to do so. I've been all over that guy when he's not struggled, but
Well,
credit for getting credit where credit's due. He's a Cardinal. I'm really happy that he's doing well. I
yeah,
don't say it begrudgingly. He's
yeah,
been terrific.
yeah. He's turned things around, and hopefully for the Cardinals, he'll stay that way. I think it's appropriate since you mentioned how good Michaelis has been. It's appropriate to note that the season began to shift for the Cardinals in a positive way on May the 12th. That was that Sunday at Milwaukee, where the Cardinals were very much in danger of getting swept. 4 games. In fact, Michaelis gave up 3 early runs. And I think any honest Cardinal fan watching that game and remembering how they felt, it was kind of like, oh, well, they're going to get swept. They're going to
This
lose
is it.
4 in a row.
The Brewers has been owning him for a while.
Yeah. But Michaelis said no more. He didn't give him anything the rest of the day. And the Cardinals won that game. And that started them down this path. And pardon me. So during this team's 20-11 run, I mean, Michaelis has made I think 7 starts, and he's had 6 quality starts. In fact, since May the 12th, he leads the National League in quality starts, and his ERA is like 2.76. I mean, you just can't ask for better than that. I mean, seriously, you can't be greedy. That is outstanding. And like you said, based on how he pitched early, it's kind of stunning. But I don't think it's a fluke. I mean, I think he really genuinely is pitching better. And that sinker's working again. I mean, he's pitching free and easy. His pitches are moving because literally he's not gripping the ball as tight. He's just relaxed and confident, and I think confidence has a lot to do with it. Is he going to is there going to be some reality come knocking at the door? Yeah, he's going to have some bad starts, but he has been huge in this turnaround, and it started with him on May 12th.
He's been the guy that, frankly, the Cardinals have always been claiming he is, right? Like the
Right.
leader of the staff and the stopper and so on. But he's actually been that guy. Well, I think a big difference in watching him pitch, there was a stretch when he's not going well, he can get guys to 2 strikes, but he can't put them away, whether it's a strikeout or get soft contact. When he's not going well, you see him you see him get kind of cute. He'll throw those like really slow curveballs to just try to trick him. He does feel confident right now. And even a couple of the hits he gave up yesterday were not balls that were hit hard. And I think that he's been, as Sonny Gray, Gray came back and pitched well in his last start. And I think there's reason to be excited about Gray moving forward. And Gibson has been fantastic. Gibson has been, and shout to Bernie, who's been on Gibson the entire time. He's been terrific. But really, I think you're right. Michaelis, that start, that's very smart to pinpoint that Brewers start, because it does feel when that turned around, and that felt basically Michaelis doing what traditional quote unquote leaders of this Cardinal staff have done in the past, which is shut it down, give the team a chance to win, and stop the bleeding. And he did that, and it's turned around since then.
Yeah, and let me kind of stretch the point out a little bit. Because I noticed, pardon me, man, I noticed on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, there's a little undercurrent, like the Cardinals are winning, and they're doing well, and there's this undercurrent. Like I put something up on Twitter or X earlier today, and immediately was met with, I pointed out how they have the National League's best record since May 12th, and I immediately got hit with a couple of, oh, I didn't realize the season began in the middle of May, in other words, like, well, so what? I mean, overall they're 500. No, that's really not the point. When they're sitting there 15-24 on May 11th, and they're about to get swept by the Brewers, it's like, okay, is this season like really going to entirely get away now? Or are they
not going to have a team to watch this summer?
Yeah.
I was legitimately concerned we were not going to have even meaningful games to watch.
And this is what, like, listen, man, I bring the heat. I can be as nasty as anybody when it comes to telling it straight about the Cardinals and pointing, putting holes through various things. But I mean, my theory is pretty simple. When you start off 15-24, you can either keep going down, or you can do something about it and start winning games. And you can't change the fact you were 15 and 24. That's in the past. That's filed away. That's gone. You can't do anything about it. But what you can do is start to play better and start to win games and start to pitch better and even start to hit better to some extent. And they've done it. So the people that are whining and can't enjoy this 20 and 11 run, they want to like nitpick it. I really don't understand the point. You can't change the fact you were 15 and 24, but you can change your season. And at least through yesterday, they have changed their season. Now there's a lot to prove. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot to prove, but they have changed the trajectory of their season. And that's the only thing they could do when they were 15 and 24. So they get credit for that. You know, let's not be petty about this, right? And I don't want to hear like the other thing I hear, it's like, oh, well, they're beating teams they should beat, in other words, well, what's so great about that? Well, first of all, they swept the Orioles, okay? And the other thing is they're starting with here we go again, starting with that Michaelis game at Milwaukee on the 12th of May. The Cardinals are 9-3 against NL Central teams. So I think it's important to win games against NL Central teams. We know that the Brewers owned them for the first 6 times they met this season. They won all 6 games. That was embarrassing. But again, you can't change what already's happened. You can change what you do going forward. And the Cardinals have won 9 out of 12 from NL Central teams since then. And, we know these are not super teams. But again, that's not the point. You either win the games or you lose them.
And I want to get to the second person I'm going to actually praise that we don't always praise in a second. But I do want to say, I do wonder if some of that reaction is the fact that the Cardinals aren't winning these games. These games count. These games are, there's no question that these games count. They're great. Again, the Cardinals are the number 5 seed. That's incredible, by the way, just to think about the fact that says a lot about the National League wildcard chase. But the fact that they're the number 5 seed in the playoffs right now, that's to say when they were 15 and 24, I didn't see that happening anytime soon. But I do think that, you look at these weekend's games. This weekend's games, it's hard to say, the Cubs are a mess right now. The Cubs are
totally
an absolute mess right now. But it's hard to say, though, that the Cardinals just went out and exerted their will on the Cubs. Like the Cardinals basically got one home run from Pedro Pages on Friday,
right,
and a 1 home run from Pedro Pages on Sunday, and that was half their offense for the entire weekend. And, there were some bits here that they missed some opportunities. I thought the Cubs missed some opportunities on Saturday. The Cardinals actually had more of a chance to win that game than they probably should have. But at a certain level, the Cardinals, you don't look at, I have a hard time looking at this Cardinals team with the run differential they have and say, all right, here comes the run. I don't think people entirely trust this Cardinals team. And I think that's fair.
I do. I agree with you. Go ahead.
I think that's totally fair not to trust them for a variety of reasons. But again, there are lots of reasons not to trust the Cubs and the Reds and the Mets and the Padres and the Pirates and the Giants and the Diamondbacks and all these other teams.
Oh, don't leave those Nationals out of it.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, exactly. There's lots of reasons. They're half game on the Cardinals. So there's lots of reason not to trust a lot of these teams right now. But the Cardinals are in that mix. And I don't think the Cardinals, listen, if you're saying, I want the Cardinals to be their historically top shelf team and they're shooting for mediocrity and therefore I can't get excited about that. I disagree. I agree with your overarching point. I can still get excited about it though, because I want the Cardinals to make the playoffs. Baseball is increasingly a sport where all that really matters is getting in the tournament. The Diamondbacks had a negative run differential last year and made the World Series. No one looks back at the Diamondback season last year and says, well, what a terrible season. They were so frustrating. They got outscored. They made the World Series. They got into the playoffs and they made the World Series, which is something that no one saw coming at all. The goal is to get in. The Cardinals have put themselves in a position to get in a way that it didn't look like was going to be possible 3 weeks ago. That's good. But I also understand looking at this team and saying, yeah, but they're scratching out these 2-1 wins. They're barely hanging on. The 1-run record is good. But the run differential is really bad. I'm not sure how much to trust the rotation. Goldschmidt and Arenado are still not stars. Gorman's going through a bad stretch right now. All the things that I think are absolutely fair criticisms of not just this team, but the front office that put it together. Totally fair, all of those things. I don't disagree. This is not a vintage Cardinals team. You do not look at this team and think, wow, the Cardinals are back, baby. You don't feel that way. but they're playing games that matter right now.
Yep.
And a couple weeks ago, it didn't look like that was possible.
Well, the offense is still the primary worry. There's no question about it. And I think the 3 games at Wrigley Field underscored that. Very frustrating to watch, although it was compelling baseball, because it was so narrow and it was so tense. I mean, it was really, really great entertainment, especially if you're a Cardinals fan because they won 2 of them. But no, the Cardinals are not going to dominate teams. They're not going to go in these stretches where they outscore the other team. They win 9 on 10 games and they outscore the other side by 25, 30 runs. I mean, they're not built that way because their offense is it's mediocre. And there's been some improvement, but it's not consistent improvement. So, but that's why, again, they're winning the games because they're pitching well, and they've been pitching well for quite a while. I mean, if you go back and look at, for example, and I know we don't like to do too many numbers on the podcast here, but in this case, like if you look, for example, they're starting pitching the first 39 games, they had a 4.49 ERA. It was 12th in the National League or 13th in the National League. So that's first 39 games. This is only starting pitching. But the last 31 games when they're 20-11, which is the best record in the National League. So in the last 31 games, they have a 3.64 starting pitching ERA, which is 3rd in the NL. I mean, that's huge improvement. Now, sustainability, of course, is the question. The other thing, if we look at it from an overall standpoint, the Cardinals run differential, you're absolutely correct. It stinks. And it also tells us, be a little careful. Don't assume things, right? Because they've still got a lot of things they got to do right. However, during this 20-11 run that they're on, they do have a plus 14 run differential. So even that has been changing. And that's all you want to see. If after a disastrous start to the season, which they had, all you can do as a Cardinal fan is hope that it gets better. And it is getting better. What the future holds, I don't know, but it has gotten better. And, we're talking about over a month of baseball now. So, they've done what they had to do, which is to get this thing back on track. Now we'll see what they can do the rest of the way. I mean, because that's a big question, obviously.
And listen, I hardly think that this run, such as it is, to get back to 500 into the number 5 spot, necessarily vindicates the front office or erases the frustrations that I think people have with the front office and the ownership group. I think that all of those things are still in play. I certainly don't want to see any. I would recommend Mo and everyone stay off the airwaves for a while and not do a see. Well, you're welcome, Cardinals fans. Like they're Cardinals is still a 500 team. Like let's not get too carried away.
No, that's right.
But there's games to keep watching. And so, but here's someone I would like to praise. I have to say, I think Marmole's been doing a really good job.
He has.
I feel like the decisions, the decisions he made, they've actually kind of made sense. I feel like the lineup decisions, I feel like the way he's handled the bullpen. I thought pulling Palante on Saturday was smart. I thought that was an aggressive move, and sometimes you don't always see those aggressive moves. He was playing like someone that was trying to win that day.
Right.
Listen, a lot of his hands are still tied. A lot. Ciani can't hit. Contreras is not back. Though he seems like he's going to be back soon, which is fantastic. But like he's still playing not playing with a full deck. But I have to say, the way he's handled the bullpen, the way he's trusted guys, the way that he's put some guys whose stuff they like but have not necessarily proven themselves in high leverage situations, I think it's working.
Sure,
I think he's doing a good job with it. I think the way he's handled someone like Ryan Fernandez, like the fact that I looked at Kyle Leahy, I'm like, okay, they seem to trust Kyle Leahy in the spot. There was probably a lot to put on Roycroft. I think on Saturday, I like the fact that he pulled Palante. Maybe putting Roycroft in that situation was maybe a risk, particularly because he's from the area. He's probably very dialed up. But also, this is what we want managers to do, right? We want them to trust their guys and find the right spots to put them. This is a team that did not, for all its success this weekend, didn't get like a ton of innings from their starters. Miklasz gave you more yesterday, but didn't get a ton of innings. But
they didn't Saturday. Yeah, they didn't Saturday. Gibson gave him 7.
Give them game 7. They got nothing. I get 3 and a little
three,
bit.
3 and a third. Yeah,
3 and
Saturday.
a third from Palante, and then however many. And didn't get much from Lynn before then. He's pulling a lot of the correct strings. There have been times where I've been worried about his bullpen use. That I've been very worried about previous managers' bullpen use. I have to say, part of winning close games is the manager. A lot of it's luck, but a lot of it is him handling the bullpen correctly. And the fact is, I think Marwell's done a really good job of that in the last couple of weeks.
No, I've been, I've pretty much praised, once the season got going a little bit, you got to let things kind of materialize before you can make judgments. But I've thought that he's done a really good job with the bullpen all year, because I've talked about this and written about this. We all know that, Romero and Kittredge and Helsley are really, really, really good. Yeah, there's going to be some hiccups, but they're really, really good. But what the biggest question they have is like, well, what are you going to do in those middle innings? What are you going to do from the sixth, seventh, eighth innings, especially if the big three, so to speak, they're not available or a couple of them aren't available? What are you going to do? Well, you clearly have to cultivate new sources of good relief pitching, and he's done that. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, to say, yeah, John King. And listen, man, I don't care that John King gave up a home run Saturday. John King's been outstanding. He's been outstanding for the Cardinals. So again, let's go with the bigger picture, what he's done all year, and he's been magnificent. But he's like, yeah, John King, you're going to get a lot of ground balls. You're actually very competitive against right-handed hitters. We trust you. Ryan Fernandez, Chaim Bloom told us that, get you to throw that slider. You got really good stuff. Okay, you're young, you're a first-time big leaguer. It might take a little while, but we believe in you, and you're going to get more of a response. You're going to get more of a high leverage role. He's cultivated him. He's cultivated some other guys as well. You mentioned Kyle Leahy. That's an important guy to be able to bring in. If just let's say you're losing and he can keep the score there. I mean, he's pitched really, really well. And I feel like I'm leaving Libator has been fantastic in relief, which Will Leitch, Bernie Miklasz, and millions of others have saying all along,
Well, we were first.
But he has been able to fashion a very respectable, and then some, a very fashionable, he's fashioned a really solid, really solid middle innings relief corps, which is something they did not have going in. We didn't know that they had that. And anybody thinks that the manager's just like this accidental guy and all that. No, I mean, this has been his plan and his strategies, and he executed very well. They have a much deeper bullpen now because of the way Marmol has used those guys who are not his big three. And the thing is, a big three can't be there every day. And we're now seeing that they can win some games. They can protect some leads, even when they don't have the Mason Wins called them the three-headed monster, but they don't have them lined up. He's cultivated enough quality out of the other guys that they can still put a win away, even if their security crew, that great security crew that you'd love to see in the late innings, even if they're not available, all three of them or only one of them or only two of them aren't available.
I mean, the Cardinals, let's just call it what it is. The Cardinals are at 500 because of their bullpen. I think there are things like that is the team strength. It's wild to say that, but the bullpen is this team strength, and part of that. Did you imagine? Ryan Fernandez, like you could squint and say, okay. Like I was excited about Kittredge. Romero was good last year. We know Helsley is good if he's handled correctly. King had a couple moments last year, but didn't really get you excited. And Liberatore, I thought, was going to try to start. So, but look at a Ryan Fernandez. Leahy's been good. Roycroft has been generally good. They're very excited about that Riley O'Brien guy who's coming back now. Middleton looks like he's out for the year. He's not coming back, which is a shame. But there's guys, right? And they're getting value. And we can say Chaim Bloom all you want. I know that I think there is I like Chaim Bloom, and I think he's been very helpful to this team. I also think that there is a tendency among fans, and frankly myself as well, because of the exhaustion that I think people have had with the front office, the fact that there's a new blood and a new exciting guy here at all and seem to be charged with the bullpen most. See, there he is. He's the genius. Give him everything. And I'm wary of that, but clearly the bullpen is working, but someone's got to deploy that the right way. And
Yeah.
I think that Marmol is doing a really good job. I mean, again, there's just no way they're 500 if the bullpen is not working and Marmol's not putting those correctly. And so I think he deserves credit for that. I know, again, I understand Marmol is the guy that takes all the hits. We both argued, I think, generally unfairly. And listen, there were stretches last year where he was really bad. And I think we've talked about how it really felt like it all started in that series against the Phillies, and kind of all the things that went
Sure.
wrong in that. I have not seen a lot of the mistakes and both on and off the field from Marmol that we saw last year. I think occasionally he gets a little bit too perturbed with the press sometimes. He's still that arrogance, I think, that people get that don't like about him. You can still see it flash every once in a while. But the way he was bad last year and in that Philly series so far, knock on whatever piece of wood you have nearby, I think there's been improvement, and that's kind of what you needed him to do.
No, there's no doubt about it. Look, man, not to get wonky, but I've always looked at one metric in terms of just a really quick and dirty evaluation of like a bullpen work, and the Cardinals like in win probability added, because I think it's really relevant to bullpen work. The win probability added. I mean, the Cardinals are number 5 in baseball with their bullpen and number 4 in the National League. So I mean, that just kind of reaffirms what we've been seeing all year. And you mentioned Roycroft, and it was that was a tough spot for him, nerves and all that. Pitching, growing up near Wrigley Field, that whole bit. But listen, he's an asset, and to me. And I don't think this is some Pollyanna view, because the guy he's a 6'8" giraffe and he throws 97. And when
Congratulations figuring out that this guy could get people out.
yeah, so I mean, I think he's going to be really good. I mean, that was a tough spot the other day, but but after all, I mean, like 2 little numbers basically did him in. So, no, he's another one that's on the rise. And, what was the biggest problem with the bullpen early? The biggest problem with the bullpen early is that Giovanni Gallegos, number 1, is not what he used to be. And number 2, he was pitching hurt. That's not Marmol's fault. I mean, what, his shoulder injury is Marmol's fault? You can say, well, he stuck with him too long. Well, because they wanted to see, they had to determine whether this was some serious thing going on, or he got him out of there though. I mean, he said enough's enough, and I mean, he basically said we got to find out what's up with him physically, and they did. So, but I can't like blame him the fact that Gallegos just went sideways. I mean, that happens with relievers. Yeah, I worry a little bit. I don't know if you do. Not Helsley. I worry a little bit about Kittredge. He's been more vulnerable in last couple 3 weeks or whatever. So it's going to be this constant high wire act, because he does rely on those big 3 so much. But any manager would. Any manager would. Why wouldn't you? That he's really got to be adept, really adept, as far as knowing when to use the right guys, and okay, what's the plan B when the right guys aren't available to you. He's really been quick on his feet and really adept of kind of like changing things on the fly, and that is a huge part of running a bullpen. But I'm convinced it doesn't matter the Cardinals can win their next 30 games, and there would still be this big, constant noise on social media about how much he sucks. I mean, so I think the guy is like in a really weird spot, because he's actually doing a good job. But people are just like really reluctant to give him credit, even if they're willing at all to give him credit. But whatever, whatever. I know that, all this stuff like, oh, he's losing the team, when they were like 9 games under 5, he wasn't losing any team. Right. His players really like him a lot. They play hard for him. I mean, they're very much in his corner. So we sort of make things up. When we don't like a manager, we make things up. That's generally speaking true of every franchise.
And listen, I think he is a representative. I mean, he's like Mo's not out there talking every day. None of the DeWitts are out there talking every day. And I do think that there are times where Marmol, I mean, listen, a large part of the job of manager is messaging, right? Like, it's a huge part of the job. And it didn't used to be. Managers used to have more power over who was on their team or how these things all worked out, and they don't have that. And so Marmol's messaging, I think he's gotten better at it, but I think that also I don't think he's as good at it as Schilt was. And I don't think he was as good as LaRue. He's better than Matheny was, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But I don't, because this is what happens when you get a manager who had not done that part of the job before, and that's
Right.
also on Mo. And so, I think that at a certain level, what I wonder about Marmol, because I think there's been improvement this year, and I think he's done a good job this year, to be entirely honest. But I think there's this old college basketball axiom that like once it starts, Gary Parrish, who does the CBS college basketball podcast, always says that once it starts to spin on a coach, you can never really get it back. And I don't think that's necessarily true in baseball. Like, for crying out loud, Aaron Boone was toast with the Yankees heading into this year, and the people were sick of him and couldn't wait for him to leave. And now he may win Manager of the Year. So, winning games makes a big difference. He also has Juan Soto. The Cardinals don't have Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, so that makes a difference. But I do think that it's hard to get confidence back, even if if he's doing a good job that we kind of think he is, because the team is not what we Cardinal fans have come to expect it to be, and he is the most clear representative, not just because he's on television every day, but because he's the product of many decisions of Mo in the front office,
Right.
and DeWitt, and he is seen fairly or unfairly as a puppet is too strong, but front man.
Yeah. And I actually don't think he's a puppet. I listen, all managers today are, unless you're Bochy or a couple of these other guys,
They're all kind of puppets.
They're all being handed printouts or downloads from the front office, recommending things. I mean, this is nothing new. This is like the whole new generation of managing. So I'm not sure why people want to like point the finger at Marmol and like really, really overplay the puppet card, because he's no different than just about every manager in baseball in terms of the relationship with the front office. I know for a fact that him and Mo get into things all the time. I mean, Marmol will absolutely push back when he disagrees with something that maybe Mo and Gersh in the front office thinks that he ought to do. That's what kind of burns my behind, this whole puppet thing, because it's just not true. Now, is he going to go on a megaphone after games? It's like, well, I had an argument with Mo before the game and I told him this. And no, he's not going to do that. He's going to keep it quiet. But he does challenge Mo. He does push back. They have a pretty, in that context, their relationship's actually a really good one, because that's what you want to have. You want to have the front office and the analytics department recommending things, and you want to have the manager that can tell you, well, no, I disagree with that. Here's why. And then you go back and forth and then you figure it out. I mean, I think that's a healthy thing, but once that narrative sets sail, forget about it. You're not going to change it, so.
And listen, part of this is what happened when you fired Schilt.
Yeah, that's right.
Thoughts about Schilt, but like one of the perceptions, without an ever official statement that they had said why they were firing him or official interview, was the understanding was there were differences between the front office and Schilt. I mean, they fired him after a winning season, after a season where I don't think anyone thought he was going to be fired. I think that set in the notion that if you're going to be manager of the Cardinals, you better be on board with Mo or he'll get rid of it.
Or to put a finer point on it, if you're a Cardinals manager, what you don't do, and I don't care who you are, unless your name's Tony La Russa and he's not going to be managing the team. The one thing you don't do, which is what Mike Schilt did, was at the end of the season and say, all right, this is how it's going to be from now on. And it's like, what? This is how it's going to be. And well, this and this. No. We're not doing it that way. We're going to do it this way. No, unless you're maybe Bruce Bochy with Chris Young at Texas. What managers basically tell the owner and the president of baseball operations, no, that's not how we're doing it. I know better. We're doing it this way. I mean, that for people to say, well, he was right. That's not the point. Okay. It simply doesn't work that way.
I agree, but I do think it's led to the fan perception that, like, who inevitably whoever took over for Schilt was going to be seen as more of a company man
Right.
after they fired Schilt.
I agree. I agree. It set Marmol up for that. But you know, you look at the offense. Like, what was he supposed to do? The offense is still a drag on the team. My God, they won 2 out of 3 games at Wrigley Field, scoring 5 runs or 6 runs in the 3 games. I think it was 6. Yet they managed. They were able to manage two games. It's not like they won 2 games, and it's not like they were killing the Pirates when they won that series either. But what are you going to do? I mean, Goldie and Arenado, we can talk about there's some improvement in some areas, but they're not where they used to be. So in the power department, your outfield's been a total mess because of injuries. And what are you going to do? They didn't bring anybody in for you. You know, the roster has been not a positive in terms of the offense. I mean, I don't think it's Marmol's fault that Jordan Walker fell off the face of the earth. I mean, I think that's up to the hitter to work on things he needs to work on. And now they're doing it right. They're going to give him plenty of time instead of rushing him back. I mean, there's a lot of things that went wrong in terms of the composition of this lineup that really are beyond the manager's reach. You know, the manager can't snap his fingers and all of a sudden have 3 really good hitting outfielders starting every day. I mean, those guys didn't exist. And then when you finally get Nootbaar back and he's starting to hit and really, really be a catalyst, well, then he gets hurt again. Well, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Is it his fault that Contreras got hurt? You know, I mean, it's just on and on and on. There's so many things that are beyond his reach in terms of getting more offense from this group that he has. This is the only group that he has, and you can only do so much because we can all agree it's a pretty flawed group of position players in terms of their offense.
And yet here they are, still hanging around somehow. And I think that and again, you know, I would also, that is to Marmol's credit, the idea that, forget that when they were 15 and 24, like when Contreras got hurt, I thought, oh, well, this is over.
Right.
like this thing is done right now. And they haven't. And they're starting to get some guys back. Nootbaar should be back, I think, pretty soon. You're going to get some bullpen reinforcements, whatever ones. I'm very curious to see how Gallegos is deployed when he returns, right? Which I think is going to be the next couple of weeks. But Contreras could be back this weekend. Edman is still, like, who knows with Edman, but he's doing stuff.
He's certainly progressing now.
Yeah.
To where I feel like, okay, I'm going to keep an eye on it now. Yeah. I didn't care before, but it looks like
that's huge. I got to tell you that, like, I'm having a hard. Michael Ciani has been a very excellent center fielder and has stabilized the outfield defense. But I mean, I know Victor Scott was set down because he couldn't hit anything, but Ciani is only barely better.
Yeah.
Like, it is hard to watch Ciani hit. And I think you've seen some slight positivity from Carlson a little bit, but he doesn't play center field as well as Ciani does.
No.
And I think his hitting is slightly better than Ciani, but not enough to. I feels like it's very weird to think that we've reached the point where Dylan Carlson is now the right-handed half of a platoon with Michael Ciani. Is really kind of where Carlson is. And you still see little moments, but there was a stretch where they played him 3 straight days. That seems like it's receded a little bit, but whatever, man. I mean, like, they won 2 games at Wrigley Field this weekend because of 2 Pedro Pages home runs.
Yeah. How about
not kid ourselves?
No, I agree with you. By the way, they're 20 and 14 since Contreras went down. So, I mean,
that's remarkable. That's really remarkable. I thought they were toast.
That's right. And, you know, and again, I think pitching has a lot to do with that, but he's also doing a good job handling the pitching. And, you know, it's a final point on with that. I think he shows a really good touch about knowing when to get a starter out of there. It's sometimes, I agree with some of his reasonable critics or skeptics. I agree with the term. I saw a lot with some smart people that I think are smart people who write about the Cardinals and, you know, all kinds of different blogs and things, or talk about them on the radio. Some people that I think know their stuff. You know, they're saying, like, listen, I think the Palante thing was a little overly aggressive, but he did have reasons for doing it. And that's the fair way to look at it. So sometimes he does get a little overly aggressive, But he's doing it for the right reasons, which is like in Palante's case, you still don't want him having to take on a bunch of right-handed hitters. I mean, there's the
And
facts.
that should have worked. As you
Yeah,
pointed out,
right. It should have
it's
worked.
not like Roycroft gave up line drives
Right.
or didn't go like those were like he made an error which did not help himself.
Right.
But like he did not give up hard contact in any
No.
stretch of the imagination.
And oh, by the way, they scored 1 run, the visiting team in that game. So they probably weren't going to win it anyway. But anyway, but look at the way I'll give you an example we should all remember. I mean, look at the way he's handled Lance Lynn. I mean, Lance Lynn does not go deep into games because Lance Lynn, frankly, it looks like he can't go deep into games, not often. And so what's the point? Like his numbers, um, in the sixth inning this year, when he gets into the sixth, like his numbers are horrific. His numbers the third time through the lineup are horrific. I mean, they just beat him up. So what kind of stupid manager would leave Lance Lynn out there to take a beating when every stat there is tells you warning, 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 he's about to hit the wall, so he's been really proactive with him. I think he seems to have a really good read when to remove other starting pitchers. Is he going to get it right every time? Well, of course not, because nobody does. But he has a really good feel for when it's time to pull that starting pitcher. And now people will jump on the few times where it didn't work. That's, oh, you don't know what he's doing. Actually, he does. He's got a very good reason for making the decision. It ain't going to work every time. It's not always going to be the result that we want, because that's just not baseball. I mean, I learned that a lot with Tony La Russa, where he would explain his decisions after games, and he would sit there for an hour talking about each one. And he said, look, I believe I did the right thing, but it ain't going to work every time. It's just because you don't get the good result doesn't mean you made a bad decision. And I think that in a lot of cases, that's absolutely true.
Look at all this Barmole love.
I know. Hey, man.
I love it. I love it.
Hey, what about, I got a question for you before we go.
Yeah, and I got a question from a couple people, so I want to toss out. No, I want to mention Rick Winfield real fast too, but yes, go.
No, real quick, just I'm gonna throw to you. All right, I like to do this. I like to be the guy that overreacts sometime. So. All right, when you're, it isn't that Pages has hit a couple of big home runs. It's just that he's starting all the time now. So what happens when Contreras comes back? Do you keep Pages knowing he's an excellent defensive catcher? Listen, we love Ivan Herrera. He is not an excellent defensive catcher. He's got a lot of work to do. I mean, a lot of work.
They run on him like crazy.
And his framing and everything else. I mean, listen, he's a great kid and he works hard and he's going to get better. But Pages defensively is far more advanced. It's not even a discussion. And Pages has got a little bit of pop. Listen, the guy's hitting 132, so I'm not getting carried away. But I wonder what they're going to do when it's go time for Contreras. Are they going to keep Pages here and say, Ivan, we really need you to work on your defense. This will be good for you, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? What do you think they'll do? What do you think they should do? And I guess, is there any way, given that at least Contreras can come off Herrera can come off the bench and pinch hit? Is there any way they would carry and be a DH from time to time? Is there any way they would carry 3 catchers?
I can see that, actually. I mean, it's funny when you look at Herrera's numbers. He's got the second highest OBP on the team.
Right.
I know, it's 335 OBP. Like he actually gets on base. Wynn's got is at 339. Like he's like right behind Wynn in getting on base. Like it doesn't feel that way because he hasn't hit for power. He hasn't hit home runs for a while. But like he's a good hitter and he's got a good sense. Like I feel for a team that needs offense as much as it does, I kind of think having Herrera. I personally would not send down Herrera.
Right.
I don't know how you can. Maybe you can't figure out 3 catchers. The fact that the pitchers seem to clearly like pitching to Pages more.
They do.
I think it is definitely of note. But Herrera's a good hitter and he still feels like a guy that is a future of what this team's trying to do. He's a good hitter and he's not a good catcher, but he is a catcher. And that is useful to have a guy a catcher that can hit a little bit. I don't know how you, a roster that has Matt Carpenter and Brendan Crawford, how you keep 3 catchers on that roster.
It's going to be tough.
Super, super hard to do.
Yeah.
So I would not send down Herrera. I see the logic in it. In the idea that let him catch more, let him get better. I just think you kind of need his bat. Now maybe when Contreras come back, you feel like you don't need his bat. Maybe you get Edman back and that loosens up Burleson to be the DH, or it loosens up some of this other stuff. But Right now, I kind of like Herrera's a good hitter, and him not being having his bat, I think would be a mistake.
No, I just want to throw it out there because I find it to be an interesting situation. I'll say this though too, after the lift that Pages has given them, with the way he handles the pitching staff and his pitch framing is among the best in the majors. It's really excellent, and he can, if you give him a chance, he can throw Steelers out. Him and Contreras both. So the interesting thing is, like, I don't disagree with the idea of, like, okay, you got to keep Herrera. I really don't disagree with that. But I'll be curious to see what the reaction will be if it's like, well, Pedro, you've helped us out. We love you, but you have to go back to Memphis now. I mean, I just wonder what the reaction
Yeah,
would be.
it's an interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, even among Cardinals pitchers, because you pointed out, you're absolutely right. They love pitching to him because he's finesses them strikes more than anybody they've had in the last couple of years, even though Contreras has gotten much better in that area. And that needs to be pointed out. Contreras has made huge progress in that area, but still, Pai is the best defensive catcher they have. There's no question about that.
Okay, we actually had a good question from Jay Curley about the Cardinals rotation for the next 3 years, but we're running out of time, so we're going to do that next week because it will still be a relevant question next week. And I got a great email from Chad Frace, who trying to look at something positive about Jordan Walker. He's not been hitting well lately, but he is hitting more flyouts than groundouts. So
that's good. No, that is good.
That is, it's not nothing, right? It's not nothing. The numbers are not popping or down there to stretch the imagination, but Jordan Walker is still a long-term part of this franchise, and I think something that we need to do well. Okay, last thing to close out. Interesting week coming up. 3 games against Florida, against Miami. Note on Tuesday, the game starts at 5:10 Central. 5:10 Central start because the Panthers, I think, are playing a Stanley Cup game.
They are.
So they actually moved it up to do that. So be ready for that. But then Thursday, they're at Rickwood Field. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be there because it's the same night that I promised my son when I would take him to see Messi. Messi is playing the Copa America here in Atlanta on Thursday night. So my son would he would abdicate himself from the family if I did not take him to see Messi. He's a huge soccer fan. So I will not be there, but that's going to be very cool. I have to say, that's basically playing the part of the Field of Dreams games this year. That's a really cool game. And then you've got the day off and then 2 back at home against San Francisco. This is a week I feel like you can go 4-2. I think next week we could talk, and the Cardinals should be over 500.
I think it's certainly a possibility, maybe even a probability. They can't go down to Miami and mess around, though. That's the only thing. They got Sonny Gray starting the opener, and that's always a good sign. So, they just can't mess around. I think Giants are playing pretty well. I mean, they're in the race. Well, who isn't then? Now that I think of it, who isn't exactly? There's not too many. But no, the Giants have been they've been pretty good here of late. I think I'm saying that without checking their recent record, but that ought to be a good series. It's kind of disjointed in a way because you have that day off after the first game, but that's totally fine. It's for a good reason. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good week for Cardinals baseball, given the fact that, they've won 2 series in a row and they're doing better in just about all phases. And, certainly the Miami series is winnable. Not that the Cardinals will take anybody for granted because they can't and they won't. But, they can't screw up. I mean, I think it would be really demoralizing if they continue this pattern, at some point. This whole, 1 step up, 2 steps back, 2 steps up, 1 step back. At some point, you're only going to prove that you're a good team by winning more consistently without having these constant interruptions where you lose a couple of games. Maybe one of those 2 losses being something you shouldn't have lost. I mean, consistency is the big challenge going forward. So we'll see how it transpires. But you can only look at the week ahead. Can't look too far down the road.
And one fun subplot, Saturday, they are lined up to face Jordan Hicks. So that should be
good.
So they're lined up to face Jordan Hicks, which will be kind of interesting. Hicks against Miklasz, 2 very different pitchers in every stretch of the imagination.
Very good. Very good. I like that.
So, all right, Bernie, we'll be back Monday. We're back to our regular Mondays now. I hope everyone had a great Father's Day. Enjoy the Rickwood. I'm really sad I'm not going to be the Rickwood Field game. I really wanted to go, but again, I if I don't take my
sure, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. Yeah, you're doing the right thing.
All right, Bernie, have a great week, and we'll talk next week.
All right, take care, Will.